Glass Joe, a name that strikes fear into the hearts of precisely nobody. When you think about this guy, your mind most likely goes to his appearances in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out for the NES or Punch-Out Wii. But his WVBA debut predates these titles. RME Joe here actually originated in the Punch-Out arcade game. Here, he serves as the first opponent you face, and honestly, he can give you a hard time if you're unfamiliar with the controls or you come into the fight unprepared. His attacks will do a pretty big chunk of damage to you, and he'll actually recover some of his own health in the process. However, do not be deceived. As you'd expect from a man named Glass Joe, this dude is super weak. You can kind of just attack him relentlessly and he won't be able to do anything about it. You're basically bullying the poor guy. It's a ridiculously easy fight if you simply mash your attacks. Body blow when he leaves his gut exposed, and hit him in the face when he leaves his jaw exposed. It's really as simple as that. But this is obviously not the last we see of Glass Joe. He once again returns as the first opponent in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and is the player's introduction to the minor circuit. And, well, yeah, no, he's even weaker in this game than he was in the last one. For the first section of the fight, my man just kinda stands there and doesn't do anything. This allows you to absolutely wail in on him and get a ton of damage in by, once again, attacking the unguarded areas. He'll block you if you punch where his arms already are, but that's not exactly an impressive feat. And when our boy Joe finally does move, he starts off with a taunt, which you can easily counter to instantly KO him and then move on to the next fight. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, that you're playing for the first time and you don't know about this trick. If this is the case, then be prepared, for Glass Joe will proceed to hit you with the slowest, most easily telegraphed attacks in the game. The best part is that he only has a grand total of 2 moves as well, both of which can be dodged or blocked in any direction. Truly a formidable offensive force. And even if he does manage to land a punch or two on you, the amount of damage he does is pitiful. Look at how little max health bar goes down here. Glass Joe's defense improves a little from this point on compared to before, which is not a high bar, but you can still pretty much just throw out punches against him and win. The guy is basically a living punching bag. This fight is not difficult. It's highly unlikely that you'll lose here, unless he happened to be one of the kids in that one React video, or Mike Tyson apparently?
I couldn't even be Glass Joe.
In all seriousness, Glass Joe being an easy beat is a very intentional part of his design. He's there to be laughed at. He's there to be a joke. Heck, his name even sounds like his biggest weakness, his glass jaw. But this deliberate incompetence also allows him to equally serve as the player's introduction to Punch-Out, the player's guinea pig for testing out the controls. He's there to make the player feel powerful and confident and spur them on, inspiring them to continue playing the rest of the game and conquering whoever else dares to stand in their way. Now, before we talk about Glass Joe's next appearance, let's address the elephant in the room here. His record. 1-99. 1 win to 99 losses. That is a wild statistic. How is it possible that out of the 100 fights that he's taken part in, this man has lost 99? This man has had 1 victory in his entire career. However, that does beg one question. Who on earth was this solitary victory against? You might think of somebody like Von Kaiser, the second opponent in the game. He's pretty weak and well past his prime, so Glass Joe beating him doesn't seem infeasible. Could it potentially have been Gabby J? He's the first character you face in Super Punch-Out and is considerably older than Glass Joe with an identical record of 1 win to 99 losses. It sounds plausible, but is surprisingly not the case. Gabby J's only win was against Glass Joe when he attended the Glass Joe School of Boxing. Who let this man open a boxing school? So if it's not Von Kaiser, if it's not Gabby J, then who is it? Well, as it turns out, the one single person that Glass Joe beat is apparently Nick Bruiser? The special circuit champion and highest ranked fighter in Super Punch-Out? Surely that can't be right. Well, rumor has it that there was a Nintendo Power magazine which stated that this was indeed the case, and that Glass Joe managed to defeat Nick Bruiser in a complete freak accident. What accident could have happened for this to even be a remote possibility? I have no idea. But by some miracle, this man pulled off the impossible. I couldn't actually track down the original article that this theory supposedly originated from, so if anyone has has any leads on this, it's definitely worth looking into. That aside, in Punch-Out Wii, Glassjoe makes his grand return, and here he plays a very similar role to that of his NES appearance. Once again, his main gimmick is that he is still incredibly weak. What I do love about this iteration of Glassjoe in particular though, is just how much personality they injected into him. This guy is full of character. For one, they decided to make him into the Frenchest man in existence. This intro is absolutely comical. We see him drinking tea, posing by the Eiffel Tower, and proudly holding a baguette in the air. Precisely nothing about this even remotely suggests that he is a boxer, and I love that. And then just look at the way this guy proudly struts into the ring and showboats to the crowd. He seems to have gained some confidence compared to the NES version, where he was almost ready to hang up his gloves and retire. The funniest part though, is that there's actually a chance that he'll stumble in his intro. The guy can't even get that right. I also love the way he hypes himself up in between rounds, even though he probably knows that he's gonna get completely decimated. It's great. As far as the match itself goes, well, he begins by proceeding to do exactly the same thing he's been doing since 1990. That is to say, absolutely nothing. He once again just sits there for the first 30 seconds of the fight, and then does his instant knockdown taunt, although this time with some added patriotism. His attacks are nothing too special either. He leaves himself wide open to being counter-attacked and telegraphs his punches from a mile off, so you can easily dodge them and get him into a stun. The best part is when you knock him out though. As he flies gracefully through the air in slow motion, he's surrounded by a whirlwind of croissants, accompanying him on his gradual descent to the floor. That is the most French thing of all time, and it is incredible. All in all, Glassjoe in contender mode is, once again, a joke. So much of a joke, in fact, that there is a challenge to let him win. Just let that one sink in for a second. Regardless, defeating Glassjoe here earns him his 100th loss, but is he gonna let that keep him down? Of course not. Somehow, some way, Glassjoe comes back swinging one more time for a shot at the title. He wants his sweet revenge on Little Mac. You see, due to all the injuries he sustained from being beaten over the head time and time again, Glassjoe decides to see a doctor. Said doctor, after seeing all of the head trauma that poor Joe has been going through, decides to intervene. How does he do that, you might ask? Well...
Je viens te chercher!
You see that? Headgear. The very thing that Glassjoe needed to protect him from taking punches to his biggest weakness, that glass jaw. Funnily enough, a neat bit of trivia is that if you manage to stack up 100 losses in this game, you'll also be given the same treatment as Joe and will receive your very own headgear, which will reduce the damage that you take. That aside, you might think that this fight will be a piece of cake. I mean sure, he has some added protection now, but at the end of the day, he's still Glassjoe, right? Well, in actuality, things might not be as simple as they seem. You heard that right, folks. Glassjoe is actually a challenge. As you probably deduced, punching Glassjoe in the head now does no damage, meaning that you can only go for gut punches against him. It doesn't seem like that big a deal, but man do you miss out on some damage. But that's not the only thing that's changed about this fight. Surprisingly, GJ has a few new tricks up his lack of sleeves. I mean, for starters, he actually attacks you from the beginning of the fight now. Way to go, buddy. Not only that, but he's also a little quicker than he used to be. And you're not ready for this one. He even has more than 2 attacks this time. You see, Glassjoe has learnt from his mistakes and is no longer as predictable as he once was. In this match, he mixes up his timing with some quicker attacks and some which he deliberately delays. Check out his uppercut, for instance. This is what he normally does, and this is the delayed version. It's a surprisingly tricky move and it's definitely caught me off guard a fair few times. He also still does the instant knockdown Vive la France taunt, but he actually has a new taunt which he throws into the mix as well.
Liberté!
Look at the footwork on display there. He even throws in an attack after doing it. Granted, you can still counter it with a well-timed punch, but it's still impressive nonetheless. Perhaps the flashiest technique comes in the form of this fancy new move where Joe weaves quickly from side to side before throwing out a quick jab to catch you off guard. And catch you off guard it may well do on your first time playing this fight. There's no denying it. Glassjoe has significantly improved here, and it's not solely because of his headgear. And if you're anything like me, you'll probably lose to this guy guy when you take him on for the first time, and let me tell you, losing to Glass Joe of all people after defeating Mr. Sandman is a truly humbling experience. To be honest, it kinda makes you feel proud of the guy. He's one of the few characters who you genuinely feel happy for when he wins, because you know this man has earned it. However, as is the case with many of your opponents in Punch-Out, there is a trick to this fight. Throughout the match, there are a number of opportunities to rack up stars against Joe, like when he's taunting or delaying a punch after stunning him. If you then use one of these star punches against him while he's stunned, it'll temporarily knock that headgear right off, allowing you to get some clean hits onto his oh-so-famous glass jaw. And eventually, once you see through all of his tricks, this fight becomes one that is very much beatable. When you take Glass Joe at face value, what you might see is a pathetic fighter who serves little purpose beyond simply being a punching bag for the player to completely destroy. But, you know what? If nothing else, I feel like you have to respect Glass Joe's sheer tenacity. Think about it. This guy has been getting bodied for his entire career, taking punch after punch, L after L. But despite all that, despite everything, not once did Glass Joe ever falter. Not once did Glass Joe shy away from a challenge. Not once did Glass Joe quit. 100 defeats later, and he's still standing. 100 defeats later, and he still has a smile on his face. Glass Joe gets knocked down, but he'll get up again. You're never gonna keep him down. That right there, that is impressive. That is dedication. So let's pour one out for this French warrior, the WVBA champion in our hearts, and a true unsung hero of gaming.